My boss had just told me that I was going to kill someone. The when part of the question was still very much unsettled, but the if component was unable to cast the feeblest shadow of doubt. That's not an easy message to give a doctor. I stood up reactively, but not out of shock. She had told me that I was needed in surgery, and I was so terrified of Dr. Vivian Scrit that I didn't want to piss her off by obeying too slowly. I didn't know there was a surgery scheduled. It wasn't. I'm sorry, I don't think it was on my dash. The funny thing about emergency surgery, Dr. Aphelis, is that the procedures are rarely planned. She stared at me over her thin spectacles like I was a small child receiving the third simple explanation to a problem that confused only me. Oh, right, I'm sorry. I turned around, then wheeled immediately back, the blood on my Crocs making me slip just a bit. Why am I going into emergency surgery? My voice shook like I was doing something wrong. If a patient is counting on me to help them, that would make dash. That would make you a doctor, she explained with a note of finality. Dr. Dorian is waiting for you in room 825. I breathed deeply. Okay. Will we both be observing the procedure? He won't be observing much of anything, Dr. Aphelis, she explained condescendingly. Patients under general anesthesia rarely know what's going on. That's kind of the point. I felt my jaw drop. I didn't know if I looked stupider when I reacted with shock or if I appeared unaffected. So I tried to stand in the middle ground of ambiguous social feedback that had defined my awkward period between birth and death. She wrinkled her brow at me. I can tell by your reaction that you're focused on satisfying my expectations, but eventual failure is easier to accept if you concern yourself with the objective result at the expense of fleeting societal expectations. Run. I made it to room 825 in under 2 minutes. J.D. was lying unconscious on an operating table. I had just seen him a few minutes earlier when he ran out of an OR that had held a very angry corpse of Dr. Brutzen. And here he lay, unconscious and ashen-faced, looking for all the world like a deflated balloon. A young nurse was the only other person in the room. What happened? I yelled in desperation. Don't know. The patient is monitorized and we're waiting for an ECG readout. BP is 10.6 and dropping. No external lacerations. No signs of internal bleeding or trauma. I grabbed my hair and pulled tightly. J.D. wasn't a patient, he was a person, and this suffering made no sense. Just like Brutzen's agony and death, or Myron's inexplicable autocannibalism. I wanted to scream, punch the wall, then curl up in the janitor's closet to eat 2 quarts of thrifty chocolate malted crunch ice cream in one sitting. So I closed my eyes, breathed out, and counted to 3. Compartmentalize. I opened my eyes and understood that a puzzle lay before me. What state was he found in? A janitor came across him lying unconscious on the ground just outside the front door. Have his vitals changed? Not in the past 3 minutes. Grab a ventilator filter and prepare for a possible intubation. Yes, doctor. I need to see if I can find dash. Beep, beep, beep. What's wrong? Patient's experiencing ventricular fibrillation. Let's move. Defibrillators ready, doctor. The first surge of electricity lifted his chest several inches from the table. I watched in horror as his mouth opened and his tongue flopped onto his cheek. That wasn't normal. The second jolt brought him nearly a foot into the air. His fingers danced and jittered before slowly coming to rest by his side, unnaturally straight. My blood chilled as his gray fingers periodically twitched as though seeking an invisible trigger. The nurse blanched. Patience, not showing any cardiological signs. He's been shocked, doctor. I prepped the defibrillator once more, wondering what would happen with the third round. I was ready for anything. I was surprised. I sent 1,000 volts of electricity into J.'s heart, and nothing happened. He didn't move. He didn't twitch. Suddenly, none of his vitals showed any signs of life at all. I called time of death on a colleague for the second time that night, 19 minutes after racing out of Dr. Scritt's office and 13 minutes after beginning a fruitless attempt at CPR. I dismissed the nurse halfway through so that she might save some patient with a reasonable chance to postpone the inevitable. Once I had accepted defeat, I wiped away tears and snot as I stared down at J.'s dead body. That's when he opened his eyes, and I opened my bladder. He had no pupils or irises. Only a sea of sad whiteness spread between his lids, vacant and sad and soul-crushingly empty. His lifeless arm grabbed my wrist hard enough to send lightning bolts of pain through my shoulder. Slowly, his corpse sat up. "Ellie," he whispered. His voice sounded weak and far away, like an echo coming up through a narrow cave. I tried to pull away, but he was just too strong. "Your brother, Timmy, is here in hell with me," I sobbed. "He wants you to know something," he continued in an unholy reverberation, staring through me with no eyes to focus. "He says that it's your fault he's here, and that if you ever loved him, you'll come down to burn with the rest of us. Every second hurts so much that he wishes he'd never been born." He hissed at me. Then he fell to the table, once again quite dead. I pulled my arm from his cooling fingers and stumbled into the hallway. Tears were brewing like storm clouds, slow but thick and angry. I could sense the heavy, dewy heat and charged tension behind my eyes, and I could feel my breaking point drawing closer, inevitable and inexorable. I looked up and saw her across from me in the hallway. No one else was present. Dr. Scritt was staring me down like a rival at the OK Corral, and I knew that this moment needed to break something wide open so that its terrible seed could spread its unholy tendrils across the blurred lines that divided this hospital from my own thoughts. Tears and words poured involuntarily from my face. Sam Brutsen, Myron Caldwell, Jim Dorian, and Cassie Endelman all died tonight. Dr. Scritt, what is going on at St. Francis? She drew her lips into a thin, white line. To be honest, I expected you to be first, Ellie Aphelis. She folded her arms. I folded mine. Rule 9 verbatim now. The morgue must house at least 13 cadavers at all times. I responded without thinking. The ghost of a smirk brushed past her lips, which she quickly hid. Dr. Dorian did not respect his obligation when I needed him to rise to the occasion during Dr. Brutsen's unwellness. This hospital can give life, Dr. Aphelis, and it can take away, but never without meaning. Dr. Scritt took a deep breath. Unfortunately for Dr. Dorian, he chose to violate the rules when the morgue had only 12 residents. The crooked scales have a way of balancing themselves, and we never have the final judgment. I wanted to fire back, to tell her that she was incorrect, to explain all the things she had overlooked because the world had jaded her inaccurate and unfair judgment. Felt very clear that she was maliciously wrong. But when I opened my mouth to speak, not a single word found its way out. Dr. Scritt nodded slowly. There are some things that we shouldn't see but have to face. Are you ready? Yes, I snapped. No, child, you're not. All of the dead people you named were smarter and better educated than you. Given the consequences that they've all suffered, do you realize what's at stake? Unable to find my voice, I nodded. She rolled her eyes. Human reproduction is driven mostly by stupidity, and the only reason we've made it this far is because our idiotic desire to kill ourselves is slightly outpaced by our idiotic need to engineer unplanned pregnancies. She rubbed her temple. Now, if you're going to have an emotional breakdown, please make it happen now. It's kinder to send you out the door with broken dreams weighing down an inadequate mind than with a room temperature body weighing down an overused gurney. I had no idea what to say, so I stayed in place. She shook her head. Brighter minds than yours have failed at half of what you want to accomplish. Why are you still here, Dr. Aphelis? I brushed away a tear. Maybe you feel it's unfair that the past has changed you, so you want to change the past? My breath hitched. Every doctor wants to be a vanguard between life and death. But we know that the latter wins eventually. Why are you here? I shook my head. I can't change the past, I whispered. All I have are myself and the present. One of us is going to control the other. I wiped my nose, wiped my eye, and wished I had done things in the opposite order. She turned crisply around and walked away. I followed without instruction. We stopped in an ordinary part of an ordinary hallway that I had passed dozens of times before. The funny thing, though, is that nothing is ordinary. I stood flabbergasted as I stared at a door that had not existed before that moment. Dr. Scrit would not look at the edifice. She instead stood next to it, staring at me in harsh judgment. It's too late to ask if you understand what I'm about to tell you, so I'll say my part and then leave you with your choices. No ordinary person can be a doctor, and no ordinary doctor can survive at St. Francis. The wisest choice would be to walk away right now and pursue a long life of predictability and oblivious joy, only to return decades later with the false hope that death is an option. I've done everything in my power to warn you about moving forward from this point, because you won't like what you see at the end of the path. She narrowed her eyes at me. If you choose not to give up, that's on you. Then she turned and walked briskly away from me. I tried, and failed, to steady my shaking breath. I knew that I would go through the door in the same way that I knew I would get out of bed every morning. There was only one way forward. Slowly, I looked up at the door that had not been real outside this point in time. Etched in its ancient wood was a number, 1913. I had memorized the rules at this point, but it no longer mattered. Barely containing my nausea, I reached out a feeble hand and turned the knob. It opened easily, almost lovingly. I swallowed and nodded. The faint smell of smoke invaded my nostrils as I stepped forward. I told myself that I could handle whatever was in there. I was wrong.